Okay, I'm going to call the meeting to order. And so we will now, you have the roll of who's here, Chris?
Yeah, let's see. We'll go ahead and get started. Rita Baker.
Here.
I don't see Christopher. Christina Brown.
Here.
Counselor Bright.
Here.
Richard Craven.
Here.
Greg DiLoretto.
Here.
William Gifford.
Here.
Mayor Milch.
Here.
Okay, it looks like Tony Fields.
I am here.
Put you on the spot right when you got in. Perfect.
Well, I emailed.
Yeah, no, it was perfect. We actually just started. Yeah.
Traffic was not what I thought it would be, and I actually was snacking and lost track of time.
Oh,
I should
that's
have been
too
on.
funny. You were actually early. That's
Yeah,
great.
yeah.
We'll call you right on time. That's perfect. All right. And I think that's it for now. We can go ahead and just keep going, and I'll mark folks off as they trickle in.
Okay. Welcome, everyone, and we'll go to Greg for the updates.
All right, welcome, everyone, and thank you for being here. We are going to pull up some slides. We had our annual summer event yesterday, so I'll start with that. We do it at our Tri-City facility, and luckily we have some big, I think they're grand fir trees that are planted there, so it provides us some nice shade. Next slide. Yeah, so we had great food, great people. That's Josh Clark on the grill he's a supervisor at our Kellogg facility. And then on the bottom picture, on the far left there, that's I think our newest employee, Josh Miner, who is a new engineer for Wes and comes from Carollo Engineering and specializes in construction and construction management, which is exactly what I need or what we need. And for the first time for many years, we have our engineering team fully staffed. So we have a pretty ambitious and audacious 5-year capital improvement plan. And I think we're in a really good position to actually deliver that and have the people on the ground to get the job done. So thanks to Josh. Next slide. So we had a water balloon toss where you get gradually farther and farther and farther apart, which was a lot of fun. I partnered up with Galen in our watersheds program, and we made it to the second to the last. There was like 4 teams that got knocked out at the very end, and 1 team emerged victorious, and we were amongst the few that made it. And then we had a very friendly water balloon fight.
Yes.
So next slide. And I don't know if you can go out. I guess the bottom right picture gives it away. I had a great time. And honestly, the dunk tank was the best place to be yesterday around noon. So
yeah, you were probably dying to get dunked.
Exactly. Yeah. All right, and now, so we'll move on. I just want to update you. I don't usually talk about, if you want to go to the next slide, maintenance work that we do. We talk about construction projects and all kinds of other things, but we did a pretty significant maintenance project recently, and that involved what we call pigging, and or sending a well, it's called a pig, and I'll show you what they look like. But basically, we cleaned out the force main that goes from the Bolton pump station in West Lynn over to the other side of the river. So we inserted the pig, actually a series of pigs. So we have a 16-inch force main or pressurized pipe that goes from Bolton across the river. And so you send a series of increasingly large diameter pigs through that in order to clean out this force main that was built in 1985 and came online in 1986. Huge shout out to West Lynn, because part of that project involves using water from fire hydrants to propel the pig through the pipe. Anyway, so yeah, and as you move from left to right, we insert the pig on the other side of the river there at Bolton. push a bunch of water behind it, goes through the force main and came out on the other side. And then we had, both traffic control work to do on that side. And also we don't want all that debris that's coming out of that 16-inch force main to get into the facility. So we had a couple locations where we were removing that as it came through. Next slide, I think.
So Greg, how long did it take for that pig to get from one end to the other?
That's a great question. I don't know.
Jeff, do you know?
It's about 5 minutes is how long it took to go from one end to the other of each pig run. One thing I'll note, and Greg might touch on it, but I haven't seen these slides, but the reason we were doing this was, this is a line that we have had a couple of failures in over the last 7 years. And so in addition to cleaning, we sent a specialized pig down, which is a smart pig. And Greg, you might have a picture of that. No,
Yeah, I'll get to that.
Yep, go for it. All right. Stealing your thunder. I'll step back. Go
That's
for
fine.
it.
Sorry, back to the previous slide. So yeah, this is what they look like. These days they're made out of, foam type rubber materials, and there's different sizes, and it's a pretty, what do you call it? Methodical process. You'll see though that the picture in the middle of the Bolton pump station, you'll see we have new pumps there. That's a brand new flight pump. And what we found is that after we installed those pumps, we weren't getting the performance out of the pump station that we expected based on the analysis of what the pump should be able to pump. And so that was part of the reason why we went ahead and did the pigging. And it was very successful. We were nervous about it. If a pig gets stuck in a pipe under a river, it's a very big deal and makes us very anxious. But it went super well, and we were actually able to regain the capacity that we anticipated. So that was great. Next slide. So in addition to regaining the capacity that we hoped for, we sent what we call Smart Pig through it. You can see on the left-hand picture, all the wires and probes that are in there. And what it does is it looks at the condition of the pipe. It has sensors in it that look at the thickness and the condition of the force main along the entire route. So I don't think we have that data back yet. Or analyzed, but we certainly have it. So we were, a little anxious about this 1986 pipe and what condition it might be in. We got the pig through it. We got the capacity we need, and we will have the data about the condition very soon. So overall, very, very thankful and successful. It was a good project. Jeff, anything to add, Jeff?
No, I get the one thing that smart pigs aren't completely intelligent is, we're looking at the interior condition of the pipe. And so the data you can collect when you're running through is on the interior side of the pipe, what the condition looks like. And so you could have, something happening on the outside of the pipe that you wouldn't be able to pick up with this. And the goal of this is to understand, after we've had a few issues in this pipeline, is what condition is the pipe in, and what opportunities do we have for rehab? Could we line the pipe? Do we need to replace the pipe? And so the goal is to come out of this with information to inform kind of what our next steps are in this basin. It's a critical piece of infrastructure for us.
Yeah.
William, you had your hand up, I saw.
Yeah, thank you. So it goes in white with blue stripes and comes out black and blue?
Yeah, yep.
In the pipe?
It's scouring the sidewalls of the pipe, and so you can imagine after 40 years, even that's after a number of pigs have gone through it, that you're not clean. It's not a steam clean. It's more a removing debris and other things that might have settled. And so some of that's caused by velocities in the pipe and low flow during the summer. When they're slower, you get buildup or deposition in the pipe. And so, yeah, even after a number of pigs had gone through, that's what it comes out looking like. And that's
How many pigs went through?
There was a series of 8 pigs that went through they come, as Greg mentioned, they're smaller and softer to start with. And so you want to make sure that when they come out the other end, they're not torn up and beat up or getting hung up. And so you gradually make them stiffer and bigger to scour better. And so it's a real systematic approach.
That's cool technology.
Mhm.
And I will, yeah. Why is it called a pig? So our engineering staff did some research apparently, and apparently when this technology was first used or developed, it was the pigs were straw balls that were wrapped in barbed wire, and when they went through the pipe, either the people sending it down or the people receiving it, it sounded the scraping of the barbed wire along the metal sounded like a squeal of a pig. And so hence the name pig.
That's funny.
Yeah, I thought that was great.
Looks like
I
Renee?
have a question, Greg or Jeff. Just not to get too graphic, but I'm curious how dirty those pipes were. Like, can you describe the volume of stuff that came out the other end, or describe in some other way how much actually got cleaned up from the pipe?
TMI.
Unfortunately, I wasn't there to witness it. We had a Vector truck there to suck it up, but there was debris, but it was not as odorous as was anticipated, I'll say. We were concerned because where we were capturing these pigs was right outside Clackamas Park, which gave us some concerns on odors and what we were going to be doing, especially in the summer months when it's really heavily used. And so we did not, that I'm aware of, receive any complaints on odors, but it definitely comes out as a black sludgy material, but it wasn't as odorous as anticipated.
What do you do with that sludge?
We vacked it up and actually brought it to the plant for processing as a septic. We put it through our septage lines at the plant. So bypassing our pump station and influent pump station and stuff, we treat it as a septage hauler. If we had identified or something big or significant had came out, we wanted the Vector truck to get it before it went down our facility, or down our interceptor, which is why we had the vac truck there. We would have evaluated taking it to a landfill for disposal, like we would a sludge when we can't haul it where we want it to go. So it would have been disposed of properly in that manner.
All right, so moving on, just wanted to invite folks, there's the Clackamas River Basin Council Watershed Celebration event on August 15th from 6 to 8 p.m. And we sponsored a table. We have 4 seats available. It's a really fun event. They do dinner and an award ceremony and a silent auction and dinner and drinks, and it's at the Carver Event Center, which if you haven't been there, it's very nice. So if anyone is interested in attending as a activity as a West Advisory Committee member, please let me and Chris know, and we will save you a seat at the table. Also, we've got upcoming movies in the park at Oregon City, Gladstone, Milwaukee, and West Lynn. So if you live in one of those cities and are interested, please attend, and you'll see some West educational and sponsorship stuff there, which we're super excited about. And then we also this week happily went to the Milwaukee City Council and got approval for the land use approval for our Kellogg admin facility remodel. So, oh, one thing I think I forgot to mention that Carol Brick attended our picnic, and so
Yeah,
thank you,
so fun.
Carol, for doing that. And as always,
Lots of fun.
you're all invited. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. We had a good time. Oh, and then today we gave a tour, just FYI, of the Downtown Oregon City Association. Juliana and Ryan attended that, who are relatively new. We don't really have a relationship with them yet, but it was great to have them come and understand where their waste is being treated and who we are and what we do and why it matters to them. So good day today. And that's all I've got. Thank you, Greg.
All right, thanks, Greg. Any further questions for Greg on his update? All right, we'll go next to the May minutes. Are there any corrections to the May minutes? Okay, hearing none, then the minutes are approved. Chris, do we have any public to comment?
I don't see anybody from the public online, so, and no hands raised. So I think we're good to move forward.
Okay, well, moving right along. That will move us to the capital projects update. Jeff, we'll turn it over to you and your folks.
Oh, Jeff, you're mute.
Starting off with the bang. I'm muted. Yep. You can go ahead and pull up the slides, Chris.
All
I've
right.
got 28 slides and a lot of words to say, so I'll try to keep within my time period. I get excited about talking about our project. So feel free to interrupt me if you have any questions along the way. I'd enjoy more interaction and less talking to you. And so raise your hand or just shout out and interrupt me. I'm okay with that either way. But so as we have done in the past, we did it last year. Before I'm in the process right now of updating our CIP, which we'll be bringing back to you at the next advisory committee meeting. This one is really kind of a look at the year in review, essentially. How did we do this past year? And so there's some slides on project status updates and kind of how we did. So next slide. But before I dive into kind of those details and such, I always like to remind folks why WES is important. You know, I love the outdoors, and I like to protect our outdoor spaces, and so that's kind of why I got in this business. And I just want to acknowledge the efforts of the people on this committee that give their time to also making sure that we're doing the right thing and protecting the environment and protecting our water quality and public health. And so thank you for being a part of our committee. Next slide. So we'll give a little background on the capital improvement plan development, project updates, kind of some next steps and some questions. This is kind of the outline I have. Next slide. So while we're here tonight to kind of discuss and give an update on the current CIP that we have adopted, I want to take a moment and recognize that this is just one of our 4 critical strategies that really these strategies are critical to supporting our mission and vision, are the strategic plan, our fiscal year budget, our long-range financial plan, and our capital plan, which is what we're here to talk about tonight. So as the capital manager, of course, I like to think of the CIP as the most important document we put together, but that's not the case. The reality is much different. So I think all of these strategies are equally important and are really the core documents that inform our decision making and set the platform for us to make data-driven decisions and not emotional decisions. And so we try to really use data and facts to inform our decisions on timing, how we can pay for things, kind of what is our strategy and what are our core values. And so all of these are intertwined together. And so just want to point that out, that while we're here to talk about the CIP, we have these other documents that are influencing this plan. Next slide. Oh, yep. And so while I mentioned these kind of core strategies that are impacting our plan, we also have the plans that make up the capital plan, which include the Hoodland Master Plan, which really looked at the collection system and the plant there from a condition related standpoint. Our sanitary sewer master plan, which was completed in 2019, the boring facilities plan, the Willamette facilities plan, and our storm system master plan, which was the most recent plan. I'll note that we are going to kick off this coming fiscal year a Hoodland facility plan. So looking less at the collection system and really more at the facility itself. It's an aging system and we really need to know what improvements we should be making there. And we'll be revisiting the boring facilities plan. We've kicked off a kind of an update to that plan already. We got some grant money to spend, and so we're looking at ways to make sure that we can effectively use that grant money.
Hey, Jeff, if you don't mind. So the
Sure,
Willamette facilities plan is, we call it that because it's both our Kellogg facility and our Tri-City facility. With the Intertie project, those 2 facilities are very much tied together, and we manage flows between them, and we will continue to do that in the future. And essentially they're sister and complementary facilities. So that Willamette facilities plan is looking like 40 years in the future for both of those facilities.
Yeah, as Greg mentioned, many of our projects are interrelated, so this thoughtful planning is really critical to ensure that we're making the right sized investments, but not only the right sized investments, but making those investments at the right time as well. Nothing worse than building something that you don't need, and it's just a stranded asset that might keep you from building something that you do need. So these plans are all interrelated and fit into the CIP. Next slide. So as we develop our CIP, which is based on all the planning documents, there's really two main categories that drive a majority of the projects in our plans. The first is ensuring the capacity of the system, that's treatment and collection, making sure that that capacity is adequate to support the anticipated growth of our community, be it residential, commercial, industrial. We want to make sure that we can accommodate that and not be in the way of that kind of growth. And the second is to ensure that the infrastructure we own continues to be available to be operated by our amazing O&M staff. If pumps and other things, they do have useful lives associated with them. And so we want to make sure that we maintain those systems and replace them when they're at the end of their useful life. So two main categories we look at is the capacity and the reliability. Next slide. So here's kind of when we look at those, our projects in our CIP, just on a percentage basis, we have, as I mentioned, the reliability and the capacity. And as you'll see here, our reliability component is a much larger percentage. It's almost a 60-40 with a sliver of regulatory in there. I want to take a moment, though, and highlight this regulatory component. As you can see, we have a pretty small amount that we allocate or we anticipate for regulatory. But if we get a different permit limit than we're anticipating, and so all of our facility planning, as Greg mentioned, is really focused on both Kellogg and Tri-City. There are some unknowns in there. We don't, if a limit comes down, that could change our planning documents significantly. And so we are in the process of working with the EQ on our Willamette facility plan and getting their buy-off on our path forward. And so I just want to let this group know that that's not finalized or set in stone, and those conversations are ongoing even to this day. We obviously will get DEQ concurrence before we would kick a project off to make sure that we're doing what we're allowed to do. But there is a piece of that we're not seeing or forecasting significant regulatory changes at this time coming down the window in the Willamette River Basin. Next slide. So how are we doing delivering the plan? If you recall, we had historically, one thing I want to make note of that was a big change this year was historically we had developed a budget and then created a CIP after that. Last year, we kind of reversed that order where we built our CIP, which then fed into our budget, which was so much nicer. I'll say it that way. It was a lot easier to build the budget when you kind of know what you have to build. So, but as you can see, we've been a very busy group. Our capital plan had identified 17 projects, and we're currently working on all 17 of them. We had a budget of $49.7 million this year, and I'm anticipating spending roughly 41 million of that money, or about 82% of our budget versus actual. So I want to step back and comment on how one project can really significantly swing that number, and the timing of construction can have a really big impact on that. And so the project I'll highlight is the Tri-City Outfall project. It's the biggest dollar project we have in our plan at $60 million of construction dollars. And so our Clackamas tunnel machine was delayed by about a month getting to our site. And so, our monthly spend this summer when we'll be doing open cut construction and tunneling, we're going to spend roughly $8 to $10 million a month on construction on the outfall. For about 4 months, we'll be spending $8 to $10 million. And so you can see a 1 month delay on that project could have a really significant impact on our budget versus actuals. And so we are delayed a month on that project. And so I think we might have even got closer to our target had things gone as we thought they might go, but things are out of our control. But I just want to highlight that, one project getting delayed can have a big impact on that. We're managing 51 contracts, which are contracts in all phases of project delivery, be it a consulting contract, a contract with a contractor, or a contract with a consultant doing planning work for us. And so we have, between our our work group, we're managing 51 contracts, which is a significant workload. And I'll just note here, while the focus of the CIP is the major projects, that's a bulk of the information. There's many annual programs that take a lot of time and energy to manage, which are the I&I reduction program, the renewal and replacement program, and our fleet. And so in addition to these kind of capital projects that are infrastructure related, we have all these smaller ones as well. Next slide. Staffing updates. As Greg mentioned before, we are full. We have a full engineering staff now, and that our last position was filled July 1st. Josh Miner came on board, as Greg mentioned. So I just want to again thank this group for supporting the recommendation to add 2 new engineering staff to our group. That was approved by the board, and we were able to get it. He couldn't start until July 1st, but he would have been on board before the end of the fiscal year if we could have had him earlier, for sure. But so that brings our total staff in the capital group to 8 engineers and 1 construction coordinator. And as Greg mentioned, we really focused our latest hire, our newest hire, Josh, is really to help us on the construction side of things. As we started to dig into how many projects we could do at any one time, there becomes a limit to what you can tear up in your system at any one time. And so, but we're paying consultants a lot of money to do inspection work for us because we just don't have the staffing to have folks out there full time. So we are having that engineer focusing on being a construction manager for us, which will allow us to not have contracts with consultants, which is a much more expensive way to deliver that. And so it's a goal of ours is to really build that in-house resource, and then you retain that knowledge in-house, which is always beneficial for the long term of our organization. And then next slide. And then of course, I'll take a moment and just highlight some of the fun stuff or the accomplishments of our group. In addition to the project delivery side of things, our group presented 4 papers at technical conferences. This year we went to NoDig, which is a trenchless conference. We've gone to Aqua, PNCWA. And so we gave 4 papers, 1 on the outfall, 2 on the I&I reduction program that we're doing, and 1 on the force main pigging. And we've already had 2 papers accepted next year to give presentations at conferences next year. And so I think it's exciting that we're out there beyond, Clackamas County, telling all the fun and exciting things that we're doing as an organization. And I think, when we went out to hire folks, we had a number of the consultants that we were working with apply for jobs at our organization, which tells me good things about our organization, that people want to come work for us. We did a lot of extensive public outreach beyond what we had historically been doing. We gave the Clackamas Interceptor tours, which were very well received, and we did a program for the Tri-City Tunnel Boring Machine Outfall Naming Contest, which was very successful. One of our engineers was an engineer in training, or an EIT. He was sat for and passed his professional engineer's test, which is a big milestone in the civil engineering world for sure. So excited to have a PE, a new PE in our group. And then Jessica Renner was asked by peers to become the committee chair for the Utility Management Committee at PNCWA. That committee had kind of gotten wasn't cared for, or wasn't really advanced, and kind of became stagnant. And so she's gotten in there and set up a bunch of new stuff, and is working hard with our member city and with our member community and the PNCWA, which is very exciting.
Hey, Jeff, would you mind just elaborating a bit on what PNCWA is and where it covers?
Sure. PNCWA is the Pacific Northwest Clean Water Association, and it's really it's a regional organization that focuses on water, wastewater, mostly wastewater, but it covers Washington, Idaho, and Oregon are the main kind of states that it covers. And it's a professional organization that puts on conferences for technical papers and growth and learning. They also support subcommittees around construction issue. There's this utility management, there's a construction, there's a biosolids, there's all these different committees that make up the organization that allow you to just have technical resources available to you and also information share amongst peer organizations and consultants. So it's something that we're pretty prominent in, and I believe firmly in that, you know, having us be members and present at these conferences is good for us as a whole in terms of how we're viewed as a organization in the industry, which, as I mentioned, not only gets us good employees looking at us, but also when we're looking for complex projects and we're sophisticated and we present ourselves as a sophisticated organization, we get better consultants to come work for us, quite frankly. And I'll say, Greg really pushed for a lot more PNCWA presentations and other things. And when I first started here, you know, we used to get one proposal from consultants on our projects, and now we regularly get 3 or even 4, which is a lot. You know, it's people want to come work for us, which is always a good thing. Next slide. Okay, so that's all about those kinds of things, and I'll move on to talking about the projects now. And so I'm sure you might be tired of hearing about the Outfall project, but well, it'll be around for at least another 18 months or so. So we're back at it again, reporting on the Outfall. If you recall, we're installing a new 7.5-foot pipeline from the Tri-City facility to the Willamette River. A couple of highlights from this past year. In February of 2024, we broke ground. So I wanted to thank Greg DiLoretto and Mayor McGriff for speaking at the groundbreaking, and for others that were able to join. It was a windy but really lovely day out there, and it was a lot of fun. A few interesting highlights from a project standpoint. From the very beginning of the project, we worked closely with the Army Corps of Engineers, SHPO, which is the State Historic Preservation Office, on the permitting part of the project related to the archaeological componentry of the. And so based on the final permit issued, you know, one of the interesting things we're going to be doing is we're going to be using cadaver dogs. So you can imagine when you start your tunnel, it doesn't stop. If you stop, ground can kind of close in on you. It can settle on your machine, and it can be bad for the machine. It could get stuck. I don't want to say that word again until we're into the river. But one of the things that we negotiated with the State Historic Preservation Office is the use of cadaver dogs. So we're going to take some of the spoils that come out of the drilling machine. We'll get them dewatered. We'll get them dried out, and then we'll allow cadaver dogs to come through and sniff them. And these cadaver dogs are trained to smell human remains, and so they won't trigger on animal remains, but human remains. And the tribe we're deep, and we don't expect to see anything, but I think they want some more information in this kind of hotbed of archaeological stuff in the area. So we'll be doing that, which is something new that we've not done on any of our projects, and it's a kind of a new thing that's being done out there. We did, as I mentioned, our tunnel outreach campaign, which got 650 submissions, where we landed on Clackamole. In April, we started to see pipe segments arrive on site. If you've driven by the Tri-City facility out adjacent, we have the yellow pipe. That yellow pipe is our fiberglass pipe, and that's the pipe that's really going to be used for the open cut piece. And then you'll see off back towards the cove, there's thicker gray pipe, and so that's the jacking pipe that is going to be installed as part of our tunneling machine. And we've started to see pipe arrive. July 4th, just last week, Clackamole left Germany on a barge headed to the U.S. We're anticipating the arrival of the machine at the end of the month or the first week of August, depending on how quickly it gets through customs in the port. And then just next week on Monday, actual digging on the open cut piece will begin, and that'll start down by the tunnel launch and work their way towards the plant. So it's going to move really fast and really furiously. By the end of November, we're expecting to have our pipe out in the river and our open cut pieces to the plant. So, you know, all these 4 or 5 years I've been working on this project, a majority of it's going to be built in about 6 months. So very exciting. Very exciting times on the Outfall. Next slide. The Tri-City Influent Pump Station. This was original to the plant, 1985 construction. This pump station receives all the raw wastewater from the collection system and lifts the flow up to the treatment processes, where it is allowed to flow by gravity all the way through our treatment systems and out to the river. The facility plan identified both a need for condition upgrades as well as an expansion required for the pumping capacity to accommodate the anticipated growth in the service area. And as you can imagine, this station needs to handle all ranges of flows. Flows that we receive during the overnight in the dry weather are much different than when the storm comes through. And so it's got to accommodate a large range of flow. At this point, we're underway. We're at conceptual design. And I'll just note when we talk about the planning, the current firm capacity of this station is 50.8 million gallons a day. So for those of you that aren't familiar with what a firm capacity means, basically when we rate a pump station, we rate it based on having the largest pump out of service. So we assume that we're going to lose the largest pump in the worst of times, essentially, and we design our system to accommodate that. And so we currently have a firm capacity of 50.8 million gallons, and the new station or the upgraded station will have a firm capacity of 72.3. So a pretty big increase on firm capacity. Now, I will note that the total capacity of the existing system is 68.4. So not a huge difference in what we can pump through the pump station, but we'll just have then the firm capacity available to us, which is a kind of a DEQ rating requirement. So as you can see, the project schedule there on the lower right will be building this thing in starting construction in 26, and it'll span for a year and a half or 2 years there to get in and build it. It's a pretty invasive construction project for the facility. One of the things we identified during our conceptual design is the spools. You can see down in the picture on the left, there's 5 pipes that come through the wall. On the other side of that wall is the wet well. Those spool pieces, because we need more capacity, need to be bigger. If they stay the size they are, they create issues on our pumps performance. And so that's one of those things we didn't really want to have to do, but during the conceptual design, it was found that in order to get to the firm capacity, we really do need to replace those spools. So you can imagine digging down that deep adjacent to those buildings is going to be quite a challenge and take some time. So next slide. Tri-City Primary Clarifier Project. So we've got some new folks, and so I'll take a moment to outline what the purpose of the primary clarifier is. And so this is really, it goes from the IPS, we go through our headworks, which is physical screening, and then we put it into our primary clarifiers. And it's the final physical treatment process that removes solids before we go into the biological treatment at the plant. Wastewater enters the clarifier tanks, and floatable solids, which we call, it could be fats, oils, and greases, or scum, are removed from the surface. You can see the chains that go across. They scrape the bottom one direction and the top the other direction. So we bring our scum down one way and we pull our solids that settle out down the other way. And settleable solids, that's the sludge. So we remove scum and sludge. Effluent destined for biological treatment leaves the clarifier over a weir. And the expectant range for percent removal in the primary clarifier is roughly 90 to 95% of the settleable solids. So we really slow the flow down and give it time to settle out. So all of the original equipment has been in service since 1986 when the plant was brought online. And so this project consists of replacing all the mechanical equipment, repairing the concrete surfaces, which is what you're seeing there. On the left, where those guys are spreading concrete, you see it's really aggregate, kind of under their knees. And it's really, if you look over to the picture on the right, it's kind of a before and after, or it's a during and after picture of what the walls look like when we're done. Is pretty much a new tank aesthetic. We pull off any failing concrete and then we resurface it is the intention there. So it's a good way to get a lot more useful life out of your existing infrastructure. We completed the first phase, the first 2 basins last year, and we've got 2 we're working on right now, and we'll work on the last 2 the last year. One thing I'll note, sometimes you get benefits on projects that you're not expecting. We're actually getting a higher percent solids out of our primary clarifiers right now. We would historically get about 4% solids coming out of these, and we're getting 6% solids, and that doesn't seem like a lot, but the solids go right to the digester, and so that percent solid increase from our primary clarifiers means less water going to our digesters, which gives us more capacity in our digesters. And so we'll know the net result of it over time. But, you know, this could allow us to delay the building of our future digester, which is planned in 2024 now, or 2040 now. So it's a ways off, but this could allow us to delay that even longer because it really gave us extra capacity in our digesters. Next slide. Kellogg Creek Influent Pump Station. We completed this project and all the pumps are in operation during this past winter. I want to highlight the type of pumps. These gray pumps, you'll see them, most pictures of the pumps in our stations, you're going to see these gray pumps. Greg, I think, commented on it at Bolton. They had these new gray pumps. We, as an organization, about 4 years ago, standardized on Flight and impeller pumps. They're kind of I don't want to call them the Cadillac because they're not super expensive or anything like that, but from a performance perspective, they perform amazingly in raw sewage situations. We put one in at our Willamette pump station, which is a station that was constantly having ragging issues, and that one pump didn't have any ragging issues while the other ones regularly still had ragging issues. And so we standardize on these pumps. And so these are the type of pumps we're putting in at all of our stations. And so that's a big deal because it's limits the number of spare parts we need to have on hand. A lot of those are interchangeable, and also training our O&M staff for operating and maintaining these pumps becomes simplified when you're only talking about one style of pump. And so that's a big deal, but that station's up and running and that project's complete.
What are those pumps called?
Flight, FLYGT, and they're the N impeller. It's a specific impeller type that's designed to pass big solids. I think depending on the size of the pump, some of those pumps can pass, 6-inch solids without an issue.
Thank you.
And they kind of have a cutting head on them, William. And so as you get these rags that develop in our system, and we continue to tell people don't flush wipes. Things aren't flushable. They continue to flush them anyway. And these pumps do an amazing job of getting those conveyed through our system. Next slide. Our Kellogg Creek Aeration Basin Improvements Project. As you might recall from last year, the aeration basins really are the heartbeat of the liquids treatment process at the facility. Air is supplied in these basins to the bugs that we're using to remove our organic pollutants. The control of oxygen in these basins is critical. Get just the right amount of DO, you grow just the right amount of the right type of bugs you want. If you're off, you start to grow different bugs that can impact your sludges, consistency, settleability. The main focus on this project was to overhaul the system to increase control. Our blowers are the most expensive piece of equipment we operate, and so if we can dial in and optimize the operation of those pieces of equipment, we can save money. And so this project was completed this fiscal year and is in operation. And as I mentioned, we're anticipating saving around 134,000 kilowatt hours a year on just these control optimization and piping upgrades. And we were able to get an Energy Trust incentive for this work due to the energy savings we're having for about $50,000. So Energy Trust subsidized our project $50,000 because we're able to save power, and we're taking that initiative. So a very successful project, and we continue to refine and optimize as we work through the different operating seasons, the controls for these. But it's been a success so far. Next project. Kellogg Creek Secondary Clarifier Rehab. This project was completed over 2 summer seasons. We did two clarifiers at Kellogg. We did one summer and the second the next summer. This project consisted of new drives, so it's the new motor drive to drive the mechanism. We re-leveled the mechanisms, and the weirs associated. We, as you can see, tore off the slab on the bottom, which is basically it's a surface slab, so it gives your mechanism a nice smooth surface to ride on. So you match those two up, so you get really good scraping action on the bottom, essentially. We repaired some concrete in other areas of the basins as well. And we put a new coating on the existing mechanism. So we shouldn't have to revisit these for another 20 plus years. So but it was a big success to do over 2 years. And we've actually noticed a little bit with the leveling of the weirs, we're able to more confidently pass higher flows through the Kellogg plant in a more comfortable manner. Ops is less stressed when we get up to higher flows because these basins are really performing a lot better than they were before. Next project. The Kellogg Creek Administration Building remodel. So the building was constructed in 1973, and I should have put a current picture in there on some of the facility, but these are both renderings on it. But the facilities, lab, restroom, staff lunchroom, they're all very dated and will be renovated as part of this project. Essentially, we'll gut the inside, leave the walls on the outside, and redo the inside of the facility. We're currently at 60% design with anticipation to bid this project the coming winter. As Greg mentioned, he stole my thunder on our land use hearing we did just this week. We went through that, and we're now in a kind of a protest period post land use decision. But with that was a big milestone for us to move forward with this project, which does include some landscaping. And so the picture of the rendering of the facility itself on the far left side, there's a bunch of windows in there. That is going to be a combined public meeting space. Could be used as a public meeting space, but it'll also be our staff's lunchroom. It's full of windows, and I guess everybody likes to work in a place that's comfortable and feels happy and warm and inviting. And so I think this will make our facilities more appealing for folks to want to be there and also want to work there. The locker room overhaul, a lot of improvements. We have I'll give an example. We have a converted janitorial closet currently as a shower in our facilities just because they just haven't been updated in time. So it'll be a really nice facility when we're done. The picture on the right demonstrates the kind of feel we're going for. When they popped the drop down kind of acoustical ceilings, you look up into the ceiling and you see this beautiful shiplap that was covered up at some point after it was built. And so we're going to uncover that and have higher vaulted ceilings with this shiplap feel and the warm wood. So very excited. This will be out to bid this winter, and will take about 18 months to build. And I'll note that this is really the first step in making space for our dewatering and solids handling project, where we're going to be taking over some of the existing locker room space that our staff currently occupies.
William has a question.
Oh, go for it, William.
Jeff, you mentioned this was going to be more appealing, but I was taking it from a different perspective. Is there any indication that there may be some appeals to the process? Land use appeals?
Not that I'm expecting. We had full support of council. Nobody came and gave any kind of public commentary to it. We did a lot of outreach to the neighborhood association. We have, I'll say, good relationships with the neighborhood association. We have good neighbor funds, and we try to keep and maintain our facilities. It is a wonderful park down there, and it's highly visible. And so we really work hard to maintain those relationships. And as part of that, we got some feedback on some landscaping that they wanted done, and we're incorporating that into it to try to really make sure that we're keeping people happy. Greg, did you have something to add?
Oh, I was just going to say that part of the complication is that it's zoned like downtown mixed use. It's the zoning designation doesn't necessarily match the use of the facility, and so it kind of complicates. It's a bit of a square peg in a round hole kind of thing, and so that complicated the entire process. And I think we're going to have some internal discussions about working with Milwaukee to change the land use designation so that future projects don't have to be quite as complex.
Good to know.
Next slide. So the Clackamas Area Interceptor Improvements Project is another one that you've heard a lot about. But as the Kellogg capacity is limited and there's no more room for expansion, but growth in that basin is really the largest in the region. Happy Valley grows. Some will go to Kellogg, but a majority of it will be conveyed to Tri-City via the IT2 pump station, which we'll talk about in a minute. In order to convey the flows down to the pump station, though, the Clackamas Interceptor needs to be upsized, portions of it, and different time frames. But the Clackamas Interceptor, it's a gravity system, and it's about 5 miles of pipeline that will have to be impacted in over a series of projects. We completed the 30% design, and we're advancing to a full design. Since it is gravity, we want to make sure it's all designed together. So we'll bring the full project to 60% design. At that time, we will focus our areas on the middle interceptor for construction, advancement to construction documents. And that middle interceptor, which is the yellow portion of there, it goes down to 12. And by Camp Withacombe, it's a really complicated portion, but it is the first portion we need to build, as that portion is currently at capacity. The upper and lower interceptors are targeted and slated and projected from our sanitary sewer master plan, but we'll continue to monitor flows and how quickly things grow, and we'll really deliver those projects at the right time based on our hydraulic model updates we do annually, looking at that to make sure we're not too far out in front, but also that we're not lagging behind when that flow capacity is going to be needed. A very exciting project, and I think a lot of you went on tours driving the alignment. It is a very complex project that's going to be a lot of fun permitting for us to work through some of those complexities and outreach, which we've already started, even though we're not expecting construction to really occur until 2026 on this. So really starting our outreach early. Next slide. This is a new project, and if you recall, last year we moved this project up a year. We were not originally going to get started on it until fiscal year 24-25. Instead, we started during fiscal year 23-24. We are out there now getting our planning and our field work done. We've working on geotechnical explorations along the alignments. As you can see, we've spent spring, summer. By this winter, we'll have a conceptual design to go through, and we'll be transitioning into 60% property acquisition, permitting, and then onto construction, with construction to be wrapped up in 2027. This extension has really two features. One is the east extension of the Rock Creek Interceptor along Troge Road. That'll go out to Foster, and the other is the north extension that goes all the way up to the Clackamas County, Multnomah County border, essentially. So it's a relatively large project. There's rock and some very deep sewers there. It's not a perfectly flat piece of property along the alignment. This initial conceptual phase we're in right now will take the planning level routing that was completed as part of the initial project that would build the first phase of Rock Creek. We'll make sure to refine that, looking at property acquisition. Do we have people that are willing and wanting to give us easements across their land? And those are the types of things that we'll be evaluating as we finalize that specific alignment. The corridor is going to stay. It's just a matter of which particular properties would be going through as part of this project. So there will be a lot of, you can see just from the satellite image, we have a number of properties to get land from to build this. So we have, a year to work on property acquisition to make sure we can get all the properties necessary to build this. The current plan is to build it all at one time, I'll just call out, depending on the estimates, the updated estimates we get as we work through design and the costs of the project. It could be phased, but our current plan is to build it all at one time. Aaron will tell me if we need to phase it based on how much money we have to spend. But next slide. The IT2 force main I mentioned before, the Clackamas Interceptor brings flow down to the station. If it doesn't come to the station, it goes by gravity onto Kellogg. So this station is really our opportunity to pull flows out of the interceptor to send them to IT2. We are currently out to bid on the force main piece, which is those segments A through F there. That's the pipeline pieces. We're expecting bids to come back next Thursday. So I'll have a real good feel on costs next Thursday on what this portion of the project is going to cost. And then we are working at 90% design on the pump station improvements. And on these pump station force main projects, it's really two different types of construction. One's linear along streets and one's really mechanical, process mechanical at a pump station. And so we traditionally separate those into two different contracts for two different contractors, and we manage them that way. There's a lot of interplay here between those two. The big part of this project that kind of is not really infrastructure related, it's really the controls. As you can imagine, the controls are very complex, and we're getting ready to make them more complex by adding this 30-inch force main. So now we'll have a 20 we can send flow through, a 30 we can send flow through. We can let it go to Kellogg. There's a delay in the controls on what you let pass the pump station. And so we've built this dynamic controls model that we can then play with to dial in exactly where our flows are going to go and build in this delay time to understand how it's going to impact our facilities. Currently, we kind of have a set it approach. We strip off a certain percentage of flow and send it down to Tri-City. But with this new control scheme, we're going to be able to dial it in a much more refined approach and have much better control. That will particularly become more important when we build our wet weather expansion at Tri-City, because then not only will we have two treatment plants, it'll really be like a third treatment plant that we can send flow to. So making sure that we don't bring that facility online unless we absolutely have to. So managing the flows to maximize the capacity at Kellogg and Tri-City will be important, which is really the goal of this control scheme. So a big portion of this project won't even be built. It'll be programs and controls related to it. So a really complex project, and it's really kind of the heartbeat of our system, because we're sending flows to where we want them to go. That project, from a construction standpoint, will take 2 summers to build as we work through the different segments. They're busy corridors, and we're building right next to a pipe that we built before, and so that's pretty complex construction as well because it's a narrow corridor. So we're expecting that project to be done in 2026. Next slide. Willamette Interceptor.
Excuse me. But on that previous project, you don't have the land acquisition issue that you did before.
Correct. Yeah, this is all through. If they built, so there was some easements, or not easements, but permits to come across ODOT property. That was, those portions of that project were built when they built the 20-inch force main. They put in portions of that 30-inch force main, and so otherwise it's down right away, existing county right away. So while we don't own it, it'll be down public right away. So we don't have property owners to really work with on that.
And Jeff, can you describe, based on the colors on the map, what's already in the ground versus what we're going to be connecting or building?
Sure. Yeah. So the segments that are in color there, the red, the blue, the orange, the green, the yellow, those are the segments of pipe that were not installed as part of the original construction of the 20-inch. So the segment A, B, B, C, those kind of black areas, they were more challenging. So you can see out along I-205, when we went out along the bike lane on 205, we didn't want to have to come back later and go back out onto ODOT right away and build that stuff. And so they put both the 20 and 30-inch force main in those locations. Money became an issue on why they didn't build. There was a limited amount of money, and it wasn't infrastructure that was needed at that time, but there wasn't a cost savings, quite frankly, to build it all at one time from an installation standpoint. So they built what they could afford at the time, and now we get to come in and fill in the blanks of what wasn't built at the time. So it was forward thinking as much as financially capable to build. So ours are not, I won't call them easy, but they're the easier portions of the project to come back through and install the 30-inch gaps. Next slide.
Jeff, just so you know, on time, we have 10 minutes of your time left, so just give you a heads up.
I got 6 more slides, so I think I'll be perfectly at 50. I timed myself earlier and did pretty good, so I'm
perfect.
Hopeful. The Willamette Interceptor. So this project is ongoing, and if you recall, it consists of essentially 3 separate projects. So there's the I-205 bridge crossing, which is being constructed by the ODOT contractor. There will be the new Willamette pump station, which will be not an overhaul of an existing, but a brand new pump station. We'll be decommissioning the existing pump station. and then there will be the new Willamette force main. So as I mentioned, when we do pump stations and force mains, we generally build those as with two separate contractors because it's really two different skills. We just completed this year our conceptual design of the pump station and force main, and we're moving towards 30% on that design. So I do want to note in this, even though we're not anticipating construction to begin on this project until 2026, we have had a couple of meetings now with the Westland Engineering Group to talk about this project. We're very aware that construction along Willamette Falls Drive is not going to be fun for anybody. It's going to be very challenging to build and very impactful to the community. And this will especially be true pending the outcome of tolling, which everybody's familiar with in our area, but ODOT anticipated that traffic along the Willamette Falls corridor could potentially double if tolling's instituted, and so that would be kind of a double down effect on the impacts of our construction. And so we've started early communications with Westland, as we try to do on all of our projects, get out early and make sure that everybody's informed. And so we haven't done a lot of public outreach to the general public. We have been in conversations with the technical staff at Westland that this project is coming, and working with them on the impacts in those areas. The pump station, one of the things I'll notice that came out of the conceptual design is the soils in the area adjacent to our existing pump station have a high chance of liquefaction during a seismic event. Not really. So we could spend a lot of money making you have two options there. Spend a lot of money making ground improvements so that you basically support the structure beyond the liquefaction impact so it stays standing, or try to find a different place to build your pump station. We're fortunate that we have a pretty good amount of property down there. And so we found that if we move up the hill a little bit, the ground is much more stable. It's a little further away from the river, so the ground gets much more stable relatively quickly. And we can save a lot of money on the ground improvements. We will have some added costs in relaying some sewer to get it to that new location. But it's estimated to save around $300,000 on the overall project cost by moving our station to a different location on our property. So some of those things that, your planning documents have no real concept for what liquefaction might be. So it's one of those things that you get these cost estimates during planning. Sometimes it's inflation, sometimes it's things you weren't aware of that you find that drives prices. And so we always look for ways that we can, what's the most cost-effective way to do it while we're relaying some sewer that exists. Moving it away is a cheaper option, so it doesn't really impact operational endeavors. So let's work that way. Greg, you came off mute. Did you have something?
I did, only because I was not aware. Well, I didn't know, but I'm sure I was told about the Willamette Drive situation. I thought that our pipeline was kind of where the green line is and kind of paralleled Willamette Falls Drive, but didn't actually go up into there. So I did share that I got a question from Westland folks earlier this week about the impact there, and I may have minimized the impact. And so it sounds like we have a conversation to have about that. And apologies, but yes.
Next slide. We're getting down to the end here. Multi-pump stations project. And so this was really a program, and we've been working on it for a number of years. And as you can see from the list, when we embarked on upgrading our pump stations, it started off as a couple, and we realized with the sanitary sewer master plan, many more upgrades were required than what we originally had planned for. And so we decided to go ahead and have one consultant and one kind of approach to upgrade all of them for consistency across all of these pump stations. That helps our operations staff see controls being all the same and equipment being very similar and layouts and those types of things. But we are under construction this summer at our Gladstone facility. We've completed 4 of our pump stations, and we're out to bid on the ones up at the mountain and some small improvements at Cedar Lane, Carver, and Mitchell Creek. we expect to get bids back this week. Today, actually, I didn't hear the results on the 82nd Drive pump station, and then the next package is not advertised yet, but it's over to procurement to be advertised in the near future. And so this work will all be done next summer. A majority of it will be done next summer just on lead times, but when we're done with that, we will have touched, a high percentage of our pump stations. And as I mentioned previously, we standardize on flight pumps, which those are the types of pumps that are being installed at all of these stations. You can see the picture there. And again, this is really to give us consistent controls, address deficiencies and aging infrastructure. Not a lot of capacity increases for these smaller pump stations, some minimal capacity increases, but a lot of condition. An example of something that we're swapping out is, historically speaking, for level control, we used a system. It was a bubbler system. It was a pretty complicated system. It had air compressors and other things, which cost a lot of power consumption. And we're swapping those out with latest technology of level transducers. So it's a transducer that's down in a stilling well in the wet well, and it uses that pressure to identify how full the wet well is. And so just some of those kinds of improvements on technology, and we're standardizing across all of our stations, will really help the long-term operations and maintenance of our facilities. Next slide. Our shared collection system, it's the inflow and infiltration part of it. So just highlighting kind of our regional approach. And I'll just comment, we have fiscal year to date, we spent about $550,000 to our member communities on I&I related projects in those 19 basins that were identified in our sanitary sewer master plan. We have 3 active projects that are being done right now, and we have 11 total approved projects, with the anticipation this is about an $8 million investment we're going to be making in fiscal year 24-25. So this is no small investment that we're making in our collection system in I&I, and that's across not only our facilities that Wes owns and operates, but our member communities as well. And then the next slide, I'll give you a real world example of kind of the things we find and the things we do. And so in our collection system master plan used data from 2015. Our most recent analysis of I&I rates used data that we collected between 2017 and 2022. We really embarked on expanding our flow metering approach and collecting good data. And what we found is we are making progress in our Mount Talbert Basin. I'll highlight, one of the projects that we did and found during our analysis. We did smoke testing. We found, man, there's a detention basin over here that's smoking. That's really weird. And when we go and look, this is a Kaiser facility that was built. There was an abandoned lateral that was never plugged. And so literally, the way I can describe it is literally their entire parking area drained to this stormwater facility, which was an infiltration basin. And it wasn't infiltrating, it was infiltrating right into our abandoned service lateral and coming right into our collection system. And so those are the types of things that we find when we're out doing smoke testing. And also paint the picture, you can imagine how big of an impact this had to our I&I in this basin. Just pulling that one line off has a pretty big impact. And from a cost perspective, our field op staff went out, uncovered the abandoned lateral and plugged it. And so, not all I&I projects are expensive or cost or take a lot of time. And so this was a really quick fix, and it has shown to have a pretty immediate impact on the flow we have coming from this basin. So we hate to find them, but we also like to find them because it's a really quick, easy solution. Next slide. So our renewal projects, and so just want to highlight that we use condition assessment information to prioritize and plan our smaller projects. So this is small equipment replacement that isn't included in a larger project. During this year, we replaced a number of flow meters throughout our plant, and we're working as part of this program to rebuild the cogen engine at the Kellogg treatment plant, which had a catastrophic valve failure. And so that's offline currently. We're working through rehabbing that. And so it's this budget, it's a program. We have $800,000 a year in this. we program a number of it to asset management identified things, but we also keep some of that money available for these surprise projects that come up through the course of the year. And they're like projects, how about surprise opportunities? However you want to look at it. It's things that are unplanned, right? And things fail. No matter how good your preventative maintenance is, things fail. They have a useful life. And so these are the things. So next slide. I see Greg looking at the clock. I'm going to go quick. So we've embarked on a struvite. I mentioned last year we have struvite buildup in our centrate pipe, and centrate is the water or the fluid that's pulled out of our sludge when we send it through the dewatering. It's highly nutrient, and so it actually precipitates on our pipe. And so that's PVC pipe there on the left, that kind of crystally material, sandy looking material. It actually forms on the sides of the pipe and restricts flow in the pipe. In an effort to stop that, we have about 1,500 feet of pipe that's getting clogged pretty regularly. Our guys are spending a lot of time maintaining. We're looking at the use of ferric chloride. We're doing a pilot study. And so it's one of those opportunities that as we now have a full engineering staff, we can really support these types of opportunities to look at not only the low hanging fruit, but also, hey, here's an issue. How can we solve it? And so it's really just a testament to, working collaboratively with operations as well and trying to solve real problems beyond the capacity and the reliability. It's how can we optimize our systems to perform properly?
Get some little pigs.
Yeah. That is about 2 months of buildup. So you can imagine how often we're coming through and cleaning those pipes. It's a pretty aggressive struvite problem we have that we're working on. And then last, I'm going to end with a surface water project, and it's the Three Creeks. And so I was really heavily sanitary, but I want to mention it's a super exciting project in our surface water. It's the Three Creeks Natural Area Floodplain Enhancement Project. We all got an opportunity to tour it in this past fall in September. And so it's an 80-acre area, and the goal of the project is to improve water quality, reduce downstream flooding, and improve the habitat. Restoration of the Mount Scott Creek will include, adding some stream bed material and logs to reconnect the creek to the floodplain. We're currently continuing design on this project and finalizing scope and scale of the project as we understand the finances we have with the grants we get and other things like that. And so, but it is, the thing I'm excited about beyond that is just it's a fantastic resource that we're going to have for educational groups like the Clackamas Community College Environmental Learning Center, Trackers Earth of Portland, where I send my kids to summer camps and other things like that. And again, it's that kind of living and enjoying where you live. And we're very fortunate here. And I'm done. Questions?
All right, so we have exceeded our time.
Sorry.
Somebody has a burning question, we can take it, but you can also email Jeff, if you have a question that you've thought about this now, because it's a lot of material. I'm sure he would welcome an email, but if somebody's got a burning question they'd like to know, take it. Otherwise, we'll move on.
Thanks, Greg, for giving me a few extra minutes. I appreciate
Well, it's
it.
important
I
stuff.
apologize.
That's all right. It's important stuff. It's the gist of why we're here and what we do. Okay, well, then let's move to Alexa, who's going to give us an update on the Clackamole. Wherever Alexa went.
I'm right here. Chris is going to pull up some slides here. Hello, it's great to see everyone tonight. Jeff mentioned about 18 more months of talking about the Outfall project, but my question for you is, can there be too much Clackamole? Which I don't think so. Not yet, at least. So as an update for you this evening, I have some aerial photos from a drone to share with you tonight. So you can kind of see our Tri-City facility here. And as you know, we're installing a new 7.5-foot outfall from our Tri-City facility to the Willamette River. And in the left photo, you can see Tri-City. And at the top, you can see where the open cut construction has started. So you can kind of peek up there. And then on the right-hand side is the map. And if you can see, there's a yellow circle there. And that is where the tunnel construction will begin. And I'll show you that in the next slide. This is where the Clackamole will start its adventure. So the Clackamole is coming, and as Jeff said, it is on its way. And that means an open house is also coming soon. So as soon as we know when the Clackamole will be landing in Oregon City, a date will be set for an open house, and this will be a community event to meet the Clackamole in person. You're invited, or your communities are invited, friends and family, to come see the Clackamole before it begins its journey, and you'll have a chance to take your photo with the Clackamole. We're also going to have kids activities because it'll be August, it's summertime, so we'll have some coloring sheets of the infamous Clackamole. And this will also be an opportunity to rock your Clackamole t-shirt, which you may have heard from Chris asking for your t-shirt size. So if you haven't submitted that yet and you're interested in a Clackamole t-shirt, please send Chris your t-shirt size so we can hook you up with a shirt. And then we're going to jump to the last slide here. Here is a mock-up of the logo on the tunnel boring machine. The Clackamole. So as part of the open house, you'll have the chance to take your photo with the Clackamole. And that's all for now on the Clackamole front. There's more coming soon as we are eagerly awaiting the arrival. And I also just wanted to mention Wes is supporting community events going on throughout the summer in our communities. And our vision at Wes is to be a collaborative partner in building a clean water future for all. And so what does that look like? Well, it looks like movies in the park, like Greg mentioned, and having PSAs about what not to flush. It also includes us hosting a concert during Porch Fest. So in Milwaukee, as a part of Porch Fest, we'll be hosting a marimba band at Kellogg Creek Park on Friday, July 19th. So save the date. That'll be 6:30 to 8:30. So we hope you'll come by. And then also this month in Oregon City on Saturday, July 27th, you can find Wes at a booth at the First City Celebration hosted by the Downtown Oregon City Association. So we'll be out and about this summer, especially this month. So I hope you'll come find us.
Okay, thank you. Any questions of Alexa? If not, we'll move to our committee report outs. Do we have any committee report outs? I have a couple, but I'll go last. No? Chris, you do? Chris?
I just wanted a couple of things. Wanted to share some breaking news. Got an image of Clackamole on its way on the barge. Okay, not really, but fun nonetheless. Fun nonetheless. Major thanks to Erin for all of her magic work.
Well done.
Pretty cute. But also, thanks to everybody who participated in the survey as far as kind of what works, hybrid, Zoom, all that good stuff. And honestly, it was pretty even split all around. So I think we're going to keep how we're doing it with the 2 hybrid meetings a year, and the rest will be Zoom. And so I'm just going to really lock in the best location and just see where we get the best sound and the best all that good stuff for everybody. And then we will, on top of that, try and see if we can find just a nice date where we can just meet as a group, get a group photo, chat for a little bit. We just don't really have a whole lot of time on meeting dates to sit and talk much. So it'd be nice to have a little bit of a advisory committee social. So we'll see what we can arrange, but stay tuned for more on that. So that's it for me.
Thank you, Chris. Anyone else before I go? Okay, a couple things. One, I I don't know if I really participated, but Alexa and I showed up to support Greg Monday night when he gave his presentation to the West Linn City Council. Did a great job talking about the things that West does and keeping the council informed of what we do. So Alexa and I were there, and that turned out well. The second thing, and Jeff, when you were talking about the wipes and people using the flushable wipes, reminded me, I think some of you know, once a year, another organization, I go back to Washington, D.C., and I visit with our delegation. And last year, one of the items I brought up was the bill that was in the House, the Wipes Act. And happy to report that act has passed the House on June 11th. It's now over in the Senate where they're working on it. And Senator Merkley is the sponsor of the bill, chief sponsor of the bill. So we have somebody there. Um, and so I'm thinking it's probably going to go through. I didn't even think about this today because I could have found out what the status is right now. So it's good news though that they'll pass the House and it's moved on to the Senate now. So that's pretty good news. The last thing is back in March, Ron sent us the draft permit for the treatment the treatment plant, and I'm sure you've all read it. I finally looked through it. It is huge. So my only question was, what's the status of that, Greg? Or yeah.
Good question. We are happy with what we have. So the way the Clean Water Act works in DEQ is there's 5-year increments. You get a new permit, it's good for 5 years. Historically, DEQ has been not able to renew permits after 5 years, so they get administratively extended. Anyway, we have a new permit. We're confident that we can meet the limits moving forward. And yeah, feels like we're pretty good.
It's been issued then.
Yes.
Okay, cool. Well, that's good news. Okay, is there anything else for the good of our organization tonight?
Yeah.
I can report briefly that
Okay.
Tuesday night at the Oregon City Commission meeting, they had a presentation by their project engineer regarding their I&I program, and it looks very, very positive. I was very impressed with the presentation, and I encourage you to take a look at it on their YouTube channel.
Okay.
Yeah, you know, Greg, I will amend that a little bit. So we have a proposal in front of DEQ as far as how we want to build our future wet weather treatment capacity. And so there is some uncertainty about what level of treatment we will need to provide. So I think that's what Ron was alluding to, perhaps. But as far as our permit conditions, we're good. It's just a matter of like what we need to build and whether DEQ is going to make it more difficult for us or more expensive. But it's not catastrophic, certainly. It's just something that we're working through, and we want to do what we think is the most efficient and effective treatment of these wet weather flows. And there's nuances and context around like what DEQ might want us to do that may exceed what we think is reasonable, which would cost us money. So
okay, thank you. All right, everybody. I guess that's it then. We'll adjourn the meeting and see you in a couple of months. Will be our next meeting, which is September, right?
September.
Is that the face-to-face meeting?
That'll be a hybrid for sure.
Okay, so September we can all see each other in person,
That's good.
and we'll go there. All right, thank you, everyone.
Good to see
Good night.
everybody.
Thanks.
Have a good evening, everybody. Good night.
Night.